I destroyed my best friend's dream wedding by throwing my own on the exact same day, and half her guests chose mine instead. She thought she could humiliate me and get away with it. She was wrong. The champagne flute felt ice cold against my palm as I stood in the corner of Madison's engagement party, watching her laugh with that fake, practiced giggle she'd perfected since high school. Everyone thought she was perfect. Everyone thought we were best friends. Everyone was about to learn how wrong they could be. "Isn't she just radiant?" whispered Mrs. Whitmore, one of Madison's mother's country club friends, as she adjusted her pearl necklace. "Such a beautiful bride-to-be." I nodded and smiled, the same smile I'd been wearing for months, the same smile I'd worn when Madison asked me to be her maid of honor, the same smile I'd worn through dress fittings, venue tours, and endless conversations about her perfect day. The same smile that was about to disappear forever. Because 3 hours ago, I'd heard something that changed everything. It started innocently enough. I'd arrived early to help set up the engagement party at the Riverside Country Club, because that's what best friends do, right? I was in the storage room, wrestling with a box of fairy lights, when I heard Madison's voice floating through the thin walls. I mean, I love Claire, but honestly, Madison's voice carried that particular tone she used when she thought she was being charitable. "She's been so clingy lately, ever since Derek proposed." My hands froze on the tangled lights. Derek, my boyfriend of 4 years, the man I'd been hoping would propose to me next. "Oh, you know how single girls can get around weddings," came another voice. Brittany Henderson, Madison's cousin from Connecticut, the one Madison had been gushing about for weeks. They get all desperate and weird. Exactly. And honestly, Brittany, I've been thinking. Madison's voice dropped lower, but I could still hear every word. What if we just simplified the wedding party? You know, made it more intimate? Just family? The fairy lights slipped from my numb fingers. "You mean kick Claire out?" Brittany's voice was delighted, like a child who'd just been offered extra dessert. "Well, not kick her out exactly. Just transition her to a different role. Maybe she could do a reading? Or handle the guest book? I mean, she's been my friend forever, but you're family, and honestly." Madison paused, and I could practically see her checking to make sure no one was listening. "I think she's been secretly jealous of my relationship with Connor. I've caught her staring at my ring with this look. You know, it's just uncomfortable." My vision blurred. Connor, Madison's fiancé, the man I'd introduced her to at my birthday party 2 years ago. The man who used to be my friend first. "Plus," Madison continued, her voice gaining confidence, "I'm worried she might do something embarrassing. You know how she gets when she drinks? Remember Sarah's wedding last year? She gave that rambling toast about finding love, and everyone felt so sorry for her. I just can't risk that at my wedding." Brittany laughed, a sharp, cruel sound. "God, that's so awkward. You're definitely right to replace her. I mean, what kind of maid of honor doesn't even have a boyfriend?" Actually, I did have a boyfriend. Derek Martinez, the software engineer I'd been dating since college. The man I'd been living with for 2 years. The man who'd been acting strange lately, working late, taking mysterious phone calls. The man I'd started to suspect might be planning a proposal. But Madison didn't know about Derek. I'd kept our relationship private after too many friends had tried to steal previous boyfriends. I'd learned to protect what mattered to me. Apparently, I hadn't protected it well enough. Anyway, Madison's voice was moving away now. "I'll tell her this weekend. I'll make it sound like I want her to have a more special role or something. She'll understand. Claire's always been so accommodating." Accommodating. The word hit me like a physical blow. I stood there in the storage room for exactly 37 seconds. I counted, letting their words settle into my bones. Then I picked up the fairy lights, untangled them with mechanical precision, and walked out to help set up my best friend's engagement party. For the next 3 hours, I played my part perfectly. I complimented Madison's dress, I laughed at Connor's jokes, I helped serve appetizers, and made small talk with relatives I'd known for years. I was accommodating, but inside something had shifted. Something cold and sharp and entirely new. "Claire!" Madison's voice cut through my thoughts, pulling me back to the present. She was walking toward me, Connor's arm wrapped around her waist, her engagement ring catching the light like a tiny star. There you are. I've been looking everywhere for you. Just getting some air, I said, gesturing toward the terrace doors. It's such a beautiful party, Mads. You must be so excited. Oh my God, yes! And I'm so glad you're here because I wanted to talk to you about something. Her eyes sparkled with what I now recognized as calculated enthusiasm. About the wedding. Here it comes. Actually, I said, setting down my champagne flute with deliberate care, I wanted to talk to you about something too, but you go first. Madison glanced at Connor, who squeezed her waist encouragingly. They looked like a magazine cover. His dark hair perfectly styled, her blonde waves cascading over her shoulders, both of them glowing with the kind of happiness that made other people feel small. Well, Madison began, her voice taking on that particular tone she used when she was about to deliver disappointing news while pretending it was good news. Connor and I have been talking, and we've decided to make some changes to the wedding party. Nothing major, just streamlining things a bit. I nodded, my face perfectly neutral. Streamlining. Yes! And I thought, that maybe you could have an even more special role. Instead of being in the wedding party, you could do one of the readings during the ceremony. You know how beautifully you read at Sarah's wedding last year. The reading where I'd supposedly embarrassed myself by talking about finding love. The reading that had made everyone feel sorry for me. That's so thoughtful of you, I said slowly. Really, but actually, that's what I wanted to talk to you about too. Madison's smile flickered slightly. Oh, I'm getting married. The words hung in the air like smoke. Connor's eyebrows shot up. Madison's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. You're... what? Getting married. Derek proposed last weekend. I pulled out my phone and showed them the photo I'd taken an hour ago, Derek's grandmother's vintage diamond ring on my finger, positioned carefully on the velvet jewelry box I'd borrowed from my roommate's collection of props from her theater job. It was amazing what you could accomplish with good lighting and careful angles. Madison stared at the photo, her face cycling through confusion, shock, and something that looked suspiciously like panic. But you never mentioned Derek. I mean, not seriously. I didn't even know you were still seeing him. We've been keeping it private. You know how complicated things can get when friends get involved in relationships. I let that sink in for a moment. But we've been living together for 2 years and we decided it was time. Connor was looking between us like he was watching a tennis match. Congratulations, he said uncertainly. That's wow. When's the wedding? I smiled, the first genuine smile I'd worn all evening. June 15th. Madison's face went completely white. June 15th? But that's your wedding day. I know. I tilted my head slightly, as if I was just realizing the coincidence. What are the odds, right? Derek and I looked at so many dates, but June 15th was the only one that worked with his family's schedule. His grandmother is flying in from Spain and she's not well, so we really can't change it. Madison's grip on Connor's arm had turned her knuckles white. Claire? That's our date. We booked that date a year ago. I know, isn't it funny how these things work out? Like the universe is telling us we're meant to celebrate love on the same day. I paused, letting the knife twist a little deeper. I hope you don't mind, but I already sent save the dates to some of our mutual friends. You know how quickly good venues book up. The silence stretched between us like a tightrope. Other party guests continued their conversations around us, oblivious to the small war being declared in their midst. Where? Madison's voice was barely above a whisper. Where what? Where are you having the wedding? I smiled wider. The Rosewood Estate. You remember that gorgeous venue we toured together last spring? You said it was your second choice after the country club. They had a last-minute cancellation, and Derek's family has connections with the owner, so... I shrugged, as if to say, what can you do? Madison looked like she might be sick. The Rosewood Estate was everything her country club wedding wasn't. Intimate, romantic, exclusive. The kind of place that required connections or luck to book. The kind of place that would make our mutual friends very, very curious about which wedding to attend. I should probably go, I said, checking my phone. Derek's making dinner, and we have so much planning to do. Only 3 months. I leaned in to hug Madison, whispering in her ear, "Thank you for inspiring me to go after what I really want." As I pulled back, I saw something new in Madison's eyes. Something that looked almost like respect mixed with fear. Claire. Wait. But I was already walking away, my heels clicking confidently across the marble floor. Behind me, I heard Connor asking Madison what was wrong, heard her voice rising in panic as she tried to explain. I didn't look back. Outside, the evening air was cool and sharp, carrying the scent of jasmine from the country club's gardens. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found the number I was looking for. Derek? I said when he answered. Hi, it's Claire. I know this is going to sound crazy, but how would you feel about getting married in 3 months? The pause on the other end of the line was long enough for me to second-guess everything. Then Derek laughed, that warm, surprised laugh that had made me fall for him in college. Are you proposing to me, Claire Patterson? Maybe I am. In that case, he said, and I could hear the smile in his voice, the answer is yes, but I have one condition. What's that? I get to propose to you properly first. Tonight, when you get home. My breath caught. Derek? I've been carrying the ring around for 2 months, waiting for the perfect moment. Turns out the perfect moment is when the woman you love is brave enough to ask for what she wants. I closed my eyes, feeling something tight in my chest finally loosen. I love you. I love you too. Now come home so I can do this right. As I hung up and walked toward my car, I thought about Madison's face when I'd told her about my wedding. The shock, the betrayal, the sudden understanding that her accommodating best friend wasn't quite as predictable as she'd thought. She had no idea what accommodating really looked like, but she was about to learn. Chapter 2. The perfect storm. 3 weeks later, I stood in Derek's grandmother's jewelry shop, holding the ring that would change everything. Not the prop ring from the photos, this was the real thing. A vintage Art Deco diamond that had belonged to 4 generations of Martinez women, each stone perfectly cut, each setting telling a story of love that lasted. She's beautiful, isn't she? Derek's grandmother Esperanza said as she adjusted the band to fit my finger perfectly. Her hands were weathered but steady, marked by 70 years of crafting jewelry that made people believe in forever. My husband gave this to me in 1954, right before he shipped out to Korea. I wore it through 3 children, 2 miscarriages, his deployment, his return, and 53 years of marriage. This ring knows what real love looks like. I stared down at my hand, watching the diamonds catch the afternoon light streaming through the shop windows. In 3 weeks, Derek and I had accomplished what most couples take a year to plan. We'd found a venue, booked a photographer, ordered flowers, sent invitations. It should have felt rushed, chaotic, impossible. Instead, it felt like coming home. The venue coordinator called this morning, Derek said, wrapping his arms around me from behind. Everything's confirmed for June 15th. Catering, music, decorations, all of it. And the guest list? Derek's reflection grinned at me in the mirror behind Esperanza's workbench. 87 confirmed attendees, including your college roommate flying in from Seattle, my cousin driving down from Portland, and... He paused dramatically. Apparently half of Madison's wedding guest list. I'd been tracking the RSVPs obsessively. Sarah Chen, my former study partner who'd become a successful architect. Marcus Williams, who'd been in Madison's and my friend group since high school. The Hendersons, ironically not including Brittany, who was apparently committed to her cousin's wedding. Jamie Ross, who'd been Connor's roommate in college and had introduced him to our group. Even Mrs. Martinez from our old neighborhood, who'd known both Madison and me since we were kids. One by one, they'd chosen my wedding over hers. How do you think she's handling it? Derek asked. I thought about the text messages that had been arriving with increasing frequency over the past week. Claire, can we talk? I think there's been a misunderstanding. I never meant to hurt your feelings about the wedding party. Can we meet for coffee? This is crazy. We're supposed to be best friends. People are asking me about your wedding. I don't know what to tell them. Call me. I hadn't responded to any of them. I think she's starting to understand what consequences feel like, I said. Esperanza looked up from the ring sizing, her dark eyes shrewd. This Madison, she's the one who hurt you? Derek and I had told his grandmother everything. Well, almost everything. We'd told her about the engagement party, about Madison's plan to demote me from maid of honor, about years of small cruelties disguised as friendship. We hadn't told her about the darker things I'd discovered in the weeks since. Like how Madison had been texting Connor's ex-girlfriend, feeding her information about their relationship troubles. How she'd been sabotaging my job applications by giving lukewarm references when potential employers called. How she'd been slowly, systematically isolating me from our friend group while positioning herself as the center of everyone's social lives. I'd started paying attention, and once you start seeing the patterns, you can't unsee them. She's someone who thought she could take everything that mattered to me, I said carefully. She was wrong. Esperanza nodded approvingly. Good. A woman should know her own worth. She handed me the perfectly fitted ring. This ring has seen its share of battles, Mia. It's tougher than it looks. Like me, I thought. My phone buzzed with another text, and I glanced down to see Madison's name on the screen. Claire, I'm coming over. We need to talk about this before it goes too far. I showed the text to Derek, who frowned. Want me to come with you? No, this is something I need to handle alone. An hour later, I was sitting in my living room, watching Madison pace back and forth across my hardwood floors like a caged animal. She looked different than she had at the engagement party. Thinner, more brittle, with dark circles under her eyes that her usually flawless makeup couldn't quite hide. 87 people, Claire. 87 people have told me they can't come to my wedding because they're coming to yours instead. I curled my legs under me on the couch, cradling a cup of tea. That's wonderful. Derek and I are so touched by the support. Don't. Madison spun around to face me, her blue eyes blazing. Don't pretend this isn't deliberate. Don't pretend you didn't plan this entire thing to hurt me. I fell in love, Madison. I got engaged. I planned a wedding. The same things you did. On my date. At my second choice venue. Inviting my friends. Our friends, I corrected gently. And as for the date, well, you can't copyright a day of the year. Madison stared at me like she was seeing me for the first time, which in a way she was. Who are you? She whispered. I'm the same person I've always been. I'm just not hiding it anymore. This isn't you, Claire. You don't do things like this. You're accommodating. You're nice. You don't... She gestured wildly. You don't steal people's weddings. I set down my teacup with deliberate precision. You're right. The old Claire was accommodating. The old Claire was nice. The old Claire would have quietly stepped aside when you decided to humiliate her in front of your cousin. She would have smiled and pretended it didn't hurt when you called her clingy and desperate and jealous. Madison's face went completely white. You heard that. Every word. I stood up, walking to the window that overlooked my garden. The roses Derek had planted for me last spring were just starting to bloom. Do you know what the worst part was? Not that you wanted to kick me out of your wedding party. Not even that you talked about me like I was some pathetic charity case. The worst part was realizing that you've been doing it for years, and I was too trusting to see it. Claire, that's not. Remember when I applied for that marketing position at Stevens & Associates 2 years ago? The one I was perfect for? The one I didn't get because my reference gave me a lukewarm recommendation? Madison's silence was answer enough. Or when Jake Morrison asked you for my number at Sarah's birthday party, and you told him I was seeing someone? When I wasn't. I was protecting you. From what? Happiness? I turned back to face her. Or were you protecting yourself from having a friend who might outshine you? Madison sank into my armchair like a deflated balloon. It wasn't supposed to be like this. We were supposed to be best friends forever. We were supposed to be each other's maids of honor. We were supposed to have kids at the same time and live next door to each other and grow old together. We were, until you decided I wasn't good enough for your perfect wedding. I was scared, okay? The words burst out of her like a confession. I was scared that people would compare us and... God, Claire, look at you. Look at this apartment. Look at your career. Look at Derek. You have everything together, and I'm barely holding on. I stared at her. What are you talking about? You're marrying Connor. You have the perfect life. Madison laughed, but it sounded more like crying. Perfect life? Connor and I fight constantly. He thinks I'm shallow and materialistic. I think he's boring and judgmental. We're only getting married because we've been together for 2 years and everyone expects it. And calling off the wedding now would be more humiliating than going through with it. The confession hung between us like a bridge neither of us knew how to cross. Then why are you doing it? Because what's the alternative? Admit that I'm 27. I don't know what I want. Admit that I've been so focused on having the perfect wedding that I forgot to build a perfect relationship? Madison wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, smearing her mascara. At least if I get married, I'll have something to show for all this time. A husband, a house, a future that looks like what everyone expects. For a moment, just a moment, I felt sorry for her. For the girl who'd been so focused on appearances that she'd forgotten to look at what was underneath. For the friend who'd been so terrified of being left behind that she'd tried to hold everyone else back. Then I remembered the storage room, the laughter, the casual cruelty. You had a choice, Madison. When you decided I wasn't good enough for your wedding party, you had a choice. You could have talked to me. You could have been honest about what you were feeling instead of making me feel small and unwanted. I know, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Claire. Can't we fix this? Can't we call off your wedding and go back to how things were? I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw everything I'd been blind to for years. The desperation disguised as confidence, the insecurity masquerading as superiority, the friend who'd never really been a friend at all. No, I said quietly. We can't. Madison's face crumpled. Please, I'll make Brittany step down. I'll make you maid of honor again. I'll do whatever you want. What I want is to marry the man I love, surrounded by people who actually care about me. What I want is to stop pretending that being treated badly is the same thing as being loved. I walked to the front door and opened it. I think you should go. Madison stood slowly like an old woman. At the door, she turned back one more time. This will destroy our friendship forever. No, I said. You already did that. I'm just finally admitting it. After she left, I sat in my living room for a long time, watching the afternoon shadows stretch across the floor. My phone buzzed with a text from Derek. How did it go? Like pulling off a Band-Aid, I replied. Painful, but necessary. Are you okay? I thought about the question. Was I okay? I just ended a friendship that had lasted 15 years. I'd deliberately planned a wedding to compete with someone I'd once loved like a sister. I'd chosen revenge over reconciliation, consequences over forgiveness. I'm perfect, I texted back. See you tonight. And for the first time in years, I actually meant it. Chapter 3, The Perfect Day. June 15th dawned clear and perfect, with the kind of golden sunlight that made everything look touched by magic. I stood at the window of the bridal suite at the Rosewood estate, watching Derek's family arrange flowers in the garden below, and felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Complete peace. My phone showed 43 missed calls from Madison. I'd stopped listening to the voicemails after the first 10, when they'd progressed from angry to desperate to something that sounded like begging. The last text I'd seen before I'd turned off my phone entirely had been sent at 3 a.m. Please don't do this. I'll do anything. I'll give you anything you want. Just please don't destroy my life. But it wasn't about destroying her life anymore. It had stopped being about Madison the moment Derek slipped his grandmother's ring onto my finger, and I realized that I wasn't settling for someone else's leftovers. I was choosing someone who chose me first. You look radiant, said my college roommate Amy as she zipped up my dress. It was vintage ivory silk, simple and elegant, nothing like the elaborate ball gown Madison had chosen for her wedding. This dress looked like me, understated, classic, real. I feel radiant, I said, and meant it. Through the window, I could see guests arriving. Marcus Williams, looking handsome in his navy suit, helping his grandmother out of his car. Sarah Chen, gorgeous in a rose-colored dress, taking selfies with the estate's fountain in the background. The Hendersons, looking slightly uncomfortable but determined to be there. And then I saw someone who made my breath catch. Connor. He was standing by the entrance to the estate, wearing a black suit and a conflicted expression, checking his phone obsessively. He looked exhausted, like he hadn't slept in weeks. Is that... Amy squinted through the window. Madison's fiancé. What's he doing here? I had a pretty good idea, but I didn't say anything. Instead, I watched as Derek approached Connor, and the two men began what looked like an intense conversation. My phone buzzed with a text from Derek. Need to handle something. Start getting ready. See you at the altar in 30 minutes. 25 minutes later, I was walking through the estate's rose garden toward the ceremony area. My arm linked through my father's when I heard the commotion. Raised voices, car doors slamming, the sound of someone crying. And then I saw her. Madison was standing at the edge of the garden, still wearing her wedding dress, an elaborate white ball gown that looked like it belonged in a fairy tale, not at a casual garden wedding. Her hair was perfect, her makeup was perfect, everything about her was perfect except for her eyes, which looked wild and desperate. "Claire," she called out when she saw me. "Claire, please. You have to stop this." The guests turned to stare. My father's grip tightened on my arm. "Do you want me to?" "No," I said quietly. "Let her talk." Madison stumbled toward me, her massive dress catching on rose bushes and garden decorations. "You don't understand what's happening. Connor left me at the altar. He walked out of our wedding 20 minutes before the ceremony because he said he couldn't marry someone who would hurt her best friend out of jealousy and spite." A murmur ran through the crowd of guests. This was better than reality TV. "He said he's been watching me for months, seeing how I treat people, and he realized he doesn't like who I am when I think no one's looking." Madison's voice was getting higher, more hysterical. "He said I'm selfish and cruel and that I don't deserve friends like you, and now he's here, at your wedding, because he wants to apologize for not seeing it sooner." I looked past Madison and saw Connor standing near the ceremony arch, talking to Derek and the officiant. He looked up, caught my eye, and nodded once. A gesture of respect, maybe even admiration. "Madison," I said gently, "you need to leave." "I can't. Don't you understand? I have 300 people sitting in a church waiting for me to get married, and no groom. I have a reception booked, a honeymoon planned, a whole life that just disappeared." She grabbed my hands, her perfectly manicured nails digging into my skin. "If you call off your wedding, if you come back with me, we can fix this. Connor will come back if you tell him this was all a mistake, that we're really best friends, that..." "Madison." My voice was sharper now. "Stop." She looked at me like I'd slapped her. "I'm not calling off my wedding. I'm not going back with you. I'm not fixing your relationship or your reputation or your life. I'm marrying Derek in exactly 7 minutes, and you're not going to be here when I do. But I love you." The words came out as a wail. "You're my best friend. We're supposed to be best friends forever." "No," I said, and my voice was steady and sure. "You loved the idea of me. You loved having someone who would always say yes, who would always put your needs first, who would never challenge you or outshine you or expect you to be a better person. That's not friendship, Madison. That's not love. That's just selfishness with better marketing." Madison stared at me, mascara running down her cheeks, her perfect wedding dress wilting in the afternoon heat. Around us, my wedding guests watched in fascination and horror. "You did this on purpose." She whispered, "You planned all of this to hurt me." "I planned this," I said, gesturing to the garden, the flowers, the man waiting for me at the altar, because I wanted to marry Derek. Everything else, your empty church, your missing groom, your ruined reputation, that's just the natural consequences of your choices. I turned to my father. "I'm ready." As we walked away, I heard Madison calling after me. "This isn't over, Claire. You can't just throw away 15 years of friendship. You can't just walk away from me." But I already had. The ceremony was perfect. Derek's vows made half the guests cry. My vows made Derek cry. When the officiant pronounced us husband and wife, the cheer that went up from our friends and family was so loud it probably could be heard 3 towns over. During the reception, Connor approached me at the head table. Up close, he looked relieved, like a man who just escaped from prison. "Claire," he said, "I owe you an apology. Actually, I owe you a lot more than that. You don't owe me anything. I do. I knew what Madison was like. I saw how she treated you, how she treated everyone. I told myself it wasn't my business, that she'd grow out of it, that love could change her." He shook his head. "I should have said something years ago." "Why didn't you?" Connor was quiet for a long moment because it was easier to ignore it, because she was beautiful and social and made me feel like I was somebody important, because I was a coward. He looked out at the dance floor, where Derek was spinning me around to our wedding song. But watching what she did to you, seeing how she talked about you, I realized I didn't want to spend my life with someone who could be that cruel to someone she claimed to love. What will you do now? I don't know. Figure out who I am when I'm not trying to live up to someone else's expectations, I guess. He smiled for the first time since I'd seen him. Maybe take some time to remember what it feels like to be proud of my choices. As the evening wound down, I stood on the estate's terrace with Derek, watching our guests dance and laugh and celebrate a love that felt real and earned and true. My phone had 17 more missed calls from Madison, but I didn't care. Tomorrow I'd change my number. Next week, Derek and I would leave for our honeymoon in Italy. Next month, we'd start our real life together. Do you think she'll be okay? Derek asked, reading my mind. I thought about Madison, probably still sitting in her empty church in her fairy tale dress, surrounded by confused guests and unanswered questions. I thought about the life she'd built on other people's admiration and approval, and how quickly it had all crumbled when she'd finally pushed too far. She'll survive, I said. Madison always lands on her feet. She'll find a way to make this everyone else's fault, and she'll find new people to manipulate, and she'll build a new perfect life that looks good from the outside. And you? I looked at my husband, and felt that same sense of perfect peace I'd experienced that morning. I'm going to be happy, I said. Really? Genuinely, authentically happy. Turns out, that's the best revenge of all. Derek kissed me as fireworks lit up the sky above us, and I realized that somewhere along the way, this had stopped being about revenge entirely. It had become about something much more powerful, choosing to love myself enough to demand better. Madison had given me a gift, even if she didn't mean to. She'd shown me that I was capable of more than I'd ever imagined. More courage, more strength, more self-respect, more love. Chapter 4, The Perfect Truth. 6 months later, I was sitting in a coffee shop in downtown Portland, scrolling through wedding photos on my laptop, when I felt someone watching me. I looked up to see a woman with familiar blonde hair and tired eyes standing by my table. Madison. She looked different, thinner, older somehow, with an edge of hardness that hadn't been there before. She was wearing jeans and a simple sweater, the most casual I'd ever seen her dressed in public. "Can I sit?" she asked. I gestured to the empty chair across from me. "What are you doing in Portland?" "I moved here 3 months ago. Fresh start, new city, all that." She sat down carefully, like she was afraid I might bolt. "I heard you and Derek bought a house here." "We did. Derek got a job with a tech startup downtown. I'm freelancing now, marketing consulting. Turns out I'm pretty good at it when I'm working for people who actually want my input." Madison winced. "Claire, Before you start," I said, closing my laptop, "I want you to know that I'm not angry anymore. I was for a while, but anger is exhausting, and I had better things to do with my energy." She nodded slowly. "I heard about your wedding. I heard it was beautiful." "Perfect." It was. "And Connor sent me a text on what would have been our first anniversary. He's engaged to someone else, a kindergarten teacher from Salem. He said they met at a volunteering event, and she's the kindest person he's ever known." Madison's smile was bitter. Apparently, kindness is very important to him now. I felt a flicker of something, not quite sympathy, but not satisfaction either. Just acknowledgement. "I'm sorry your marriage didn't work out. We never got married, remember? You made sure of that." The old Madison would have said that with venom, with accusation. This Madison just sounded tired. "No," I said gently. "Connor made sure of that. I just gave him a reason to examine what he really wanted." Madison was quiet for a long moment, stirring the coffee she'd ordered but hadn't touched. "I've been in therapy," she said finally, "for 6 months now. Dr. Durap Patterson, no relation, I assume, she's been helping me understand why I did the things I did." "And what have you learned?" "That I was terrified of being alone. That I built my entire identity around being the center of attention, the perfect one, the one everyone wanted to be around. And when I felt threatened by someone, When I felt like they might be better than me, or happier than me, or more loved than me, I sabotaged them. She looked up at me with eyes that were clearer than I'd ever seen them. I sabotaged you for years, Claire, not just with the wedding party thing, with jobs, with men, with friendships. I convinced myself I was protecting you, but really I was protecting myself from having to compete. I felt something shift in my chest. Not forgiveness, exactly, but something like understanding. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve to know the truth. Because you deserve to know that none of it was about you not being good enough. It was about me being too insecure to let anyone else shine. Madison finally took a sip of her coffee, making a face at the temperature. And because I wanted to tell you that what you did, planning your wedding on the same day as mine, taking all our friends, showing everyone who you really were, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. I blinked. What? I know that sounds crazy, but losing everything, Connor, the wedding, most of our friends, my job because I had a breakdown at work the week after, it forced me to look at who I actually was underneath all the performance. And I didn't like what I saw. Madison reached into her purse and pulled out a small photo. It showed her with a group of women, all of them wearing hiking gear and genuine smiles. She looked younger in the photo, lighter somehow. I joined a hiking group when I moved here. These women don't know about my old life, about the person I used to be. They just know me as Madison, the marketing coordinator who brings too many snacks on trail hikes and cries at sad movies. She smiled, and for the first time since I'd known her, it looked completely real. They like me for who I am, not for who I pretend to be. I forgot what that felt like. I'm glad you found that. The thing is, Madison continued, I don't think I ever would have found it if you hadn't shown me what real strength looked like. You could have confronted me that day at the engagement party. You could have screamed at me, caused a scene, made me look bad in front of everyone. Instead, you just took back your power. You showed me what it looked like when someone knew their own worth. She paused, studying my face. I heard Derek propose to you that same night, the night of my engagement party. He did. So you weren't lying about the timeline. You really did get engaged before you planned your wedding for my date. I wasn't lying about any of it, Madison. I never lied to you. I know. That's what made it so devastating. You didn't have to lie or manipulate or scheme. You just had to be yourself, and it was enough to show everyone what they'd been missing. Madison's voice was soft now, almost wondering. Do you know how powerful that is? How rare it is to meet someone who doesn't need to tear others down to build themselves up. I thought about the woman I'd been 6 months ago, accommodating, self-doubting, always making herself smaller to make others comfortable. Then I thought about the woman I was now, married to a man who loved every part of me, running my own business, living in a city I'd chosen, surrounded by friends who valued honesty over perfection. I learned it from you, actually, I said. You taught me what I didn't want to be. Madison laughed, but it wasn't bitter this time. I guess that's something. The worst friend in the world, accidentally teaching life lessons. You weren't the worst friend in the world. You were just scared and young and human. I was cruel. Yes, you were. But cruelty isn't permanent unless you choose to make it permanent. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching Portland rain begin to streak the coffee shop windows. Finally, Madison spoke again. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even think I deserve it. But I wanted you to know that I see what I did now. I see how much I hurt you, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Claire. I know, I said. And for what it's worth, I forgive you. Madison's eyes filled with tears. Why? Because holding on to anger was keeping me tied to the person I used to be. Because forgiveness isn't about you deserving it, it's about me deserving peace. I paused, and because I think you're finally becoming someone worth forgiving. Madison wiped her eyes with a napkin, smudging her mascara in a way that would have horrified the old her. Can I ask you something? When you planned your wedding for the same day as mine, when you invited all our friends, when you basically orchestrated the most perfect revenge in the history of friendship betrayals, was any part of you scared? I considered the question. Terrified. I'd never stood up for myself like that before. I'd never put my own happiness first. I'd never risked losing people by showing them who I really was. But you did it anyway. I did it anyway. I smiled, remembering the feeling of putting on my wedding dress, of walking down the aisle toward Derek, of choosing love over fear. It turns out the person I was pretending to be was much scarier than the person I actually am. Madison nodded like she understood. I'm working on finding out who I actually am. It's harder than I expected. Most good things are. She stood up, leaving her untouched coffee on the table. I should go. I wanted you to know that I see you now. I see how strong you've always been, how kind you've always been, how much better you deserved than what I gave you. She paused at the edge of the table. I hope Derek knows how lucky he is. He does. I make sure to remind him daily. Madison laughed. A real laugh, surprised and genuine. Of course you do. The new Claire would. As she walked toward the door, I called after her. Madison? She turned back. I hope you find what you're looking for. I think I already have, she said. It just took me 27 years and losing everything to realize I was looking in all the wrong places. After she left, I sat in the coffee shop for another hour, thinking about the conversation, about forgiveness, about the strange ways life circles back on itself. My phone buzzed with a text from Derek. How did the client meeting go? Interesting, I replied. I'll tell you about it when I get home. Good interesting or bad interesting? Human interesting. The best kind. Love you. Love you too. I packed up my laptop and walked out into the Portland rain, thinking about Madison's hiking group, about Connor's kindergarten teacher fiancé, about the version of myself I'd been 6 months ago. That woman felt like a stranger now, someone I'd known well, but had never really understood. The rain was cold against my face, but I didn't mind. I had a warm house to go home to, a husband who chose me every day, work that fulfilled me, friends who knew all my flaws and loved me anyway. I had a life I'd built deliberately, consciously, courageously. I had everything I'd never dared to ask for, back when I was too afraid to ask for anything at all. 6 blocks from home, I passed a bridal shop with a going out of business sign in the window. Through the glass, I could see wedding dresses hanging like ghosts, beautiful and empty, and waiting for someone to bring them to life. I thought about my own wedding dress, hanging in my closet at home, still smelling faintly of roses and happiness. I thought about Madison's fairy tale ball gown, probably donated to charity or sold online, carrying the story of a day that never happened. And I thought about the woman I'd become, not in spite of Madison's betrayal, but because of my response to it. Because sometimes the worst thing that happens to you is also the thing that sets you free. My phone rang as I reached my front door. Derek's name appeared on the screen, along with a photo of him making a ridiculous face that always made me laugh. Hey, husband, I said, fumbling with my keys. Hey, wife. Question: how do you feel about hosting Thanksgiving this year? My parents want to come up from California, and your parents said they'd drive over from Seattle, and I may have already started planning the menu. I looked up at the house we'd bought together, a small craftsman with a wraparound porch and room for the family we were planning, and felt that familiar surge of gratitude for this life we'd built. I feel like that sounds perfect, I said. Fair warning, though. I'm making the stuffing, and I'm using your grandmother's recipe, and if anyone complains, they're banned from future holidays. Derek's laughter carried through the phone as I pushed open the front door. Marry me, he said. Already did. You're stuck with me now. Best decision I ever made. As I hung up and stepped into our warm, bright house, I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror. The woman looking back at me had laugh lines around her eyes, confidence in her posture, and a wedding ring that caught the light like a promise kept. She looked like someone who knew exactly who she was and wasn't afraid to let the world see it. She looked like someone who had learned the difference between accommodation and kindness, between peace and victory, between revenge and justice. She looked like someone who had finally learned how to love herself as fiercely as she loved others. She looked like me. And for the first time in my life, that was exactly who I wanted to be. The end.